All right. Shalom, shalom, mishpacha wahabrim. Shalom, shalom, mishpacha wahabrim. This is your girl, Sister Ashanti, aka Shanti Doc on the Facebook, and I am 916 Shan on my YouTube channel. All right, I am 916 Shan on my YouTube channel, and I was definitely going to go live on Debate Talk for You. However, that link was deleted, and I didn't have time to go back and edit it. Um, so with that being said, I'm just going to be streaming from 916 Shine, and then I'm also streaming from the Facebook Live. All right. Let's see. All right. So with that being said, I'm here. I'm here. Shalom, Sister Alicia. Shalom to everyone who's coming back in. I apologize earlier for the technical difficulties. We got everything worked out, and our special guest Moreh is in the building. I'll bring him on in a minute. But this is a special edition of Torah Tittles of the Text. This is called the Wall of Partition. I do want to say Kol Tehalim, Kol Kabo, Hatiferes Le'Yahweh Avinu, Eloheinu. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, our Father, our Elohim, our deity, our power. Thank you so very much for tuning in, tapping in. So, I got Moreh David in the back, but I just want to formally talk about some things real quick. I am on my channel 916 Shan. Please like the video, share it, and subscribe, please, because the more subscribers we have, the more things we can do for the people when we come on live and we do these streams and we do these lessons and teachings. All right. And then please share. Share this message. This message is very important. We have a special gem. A gentle giant is what he is called. He is very needed in the community, and I definitely appreciate his spirit, his heart, and his tenacity and his dedication to the word, to the Most High and the Most High's people. Right. So, brother Moreh David Royal, his YouTube channel is D Glen Royal. That's DGLEN, one word, and then Royal, ROYAL. All right. So he is on the Facebook as David Royal, and his YouTube channel, D Glen Royal. Please subscribe to his channel as well. All right. So the Wall of Partition, we definitely want to get into that. We want to get into the first century. We want to get into the first century Hebraic historic rendering of what that Wall of Partition was and all of the meanings that are encompassed when it comes to figuratively or metaphorically what that Wall of Partition is and means. All right. Shalom, Brother Ernest Higgs. Shalom for coming on back into the stream. Thank you so very much. So without further ado, we're going to get into this Torah Tittles of the Text, the Wall of Partition. First, we're going to bring on my boy. Y'all know, y'all see him all the time. Big League Beard himself. You know, it be shining, it be glistening, but he's definitely an awesome brother in the word, and he just so very supportive every time we do a lesson, and I'm gonna bring him on right now to formally introduce himself. Come on, brother, speak.
Greetings to greetings, all praises to the Most High, and thank you, sis. I'm just humbled to be here. When you're amongst your elders, be slow to speak. So I'm just gonna sit here and listen to show my support. I may chime in, I may not. Sometimes it's best not to speak and just allow others to teach. So, but I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for tapping in, BA. Nice to have you here. I know you're definitely a student, and a lot of times, like you said, it's definitely wise to be slow to speak and be quick to hear. All right, so without further ado, the man of the hour, the man of the hour, the one y'all been waiting for. And shalom to Ernest Higgs, shalom to Sister Regina. We're going to bring in Moreh David Royal. Moreh David Royal, thank you for being on. Thank you for being here. Please formally introduce yourself and speak to the people.
Hello and Good afternoon. That's my refined side. Shalom to everybody. It's great to be with my sister again, and with brother being Abad. Um, yeah, I like how gracious our host is when she said technical difficulties. It was more like dinosaur difficulties. It was all me in the hood on a hood phone trying to come onto a platform. But yeah, I am humbled, truly, truly, to be with the folks today. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited in so many ways about so many things, but I have to be careful because when I get excited, I'll start to run and I'll start to ramble. So I'm going to keep it between the lines here. And yeah, I'm happy to be a member of the kingdom, and a part of the people that ultimately are all driving toward one goal and one goal only, is to take that which was lost, okay, to walk it and live it out loud and be that salt and light and draw that the world may know. Amen.
Amen. So I'm gonna see if I can get us back live on Debate Talk for You. I think we are live back on Debate Talk for You. Thank you, Moreh David, for your time, your kind words, your dedication, and you said technical difficult. I said technical difficulties, and you said dinosaur. But we're not gonna charge it to you that you got the Getro. You got to take your Getro back to the store, right? No.
Yes, yes, yes. Ahmed will fix it for me.
So with that being said, y'all, we have fun, and we're definitely going to have fun during this entire live, during this entire stream. And I believe it's definitely an awesome thing to have fun while we're learning the word of the Most High Yahweh. That's what makes the word of the Most High Yahweh so liberating, so motivating, and it's just love and spirit and life, right? So with that being said, the wall of partition. Now let's get into this. The wall of partition, I did mention in one of the last lives I did. It was me and Mr. Blacktastic, right? Me and Mr. Blacktastic, we talked about Ephesians 2. And in the point of fact, we were talking about how somebody from the Sunday Christian community was talking about, okay, now that they're in the new covenant, they can still consider themselves Gentiles and strangers and foreigners, right? And they was talking about how in Deuteronomy 14, since they're called strangers and foreigners, that they can have meat strangled, meat that dies of itself. And they also said they can just have any kind of food that they want. So they're saying that even though they're saved, they don't have to keep the dietary laws because they want to keep calling themselves a stranger or a foreigner, right?
Mm.
And so I went to Ephesians 2. Me and Mr. Blacktastic went to Ephesians 2. We read the majority of the passage, right? And we looked at Ephesians 2 in the Hebrew and in the Greek, right? In the Hebrew and in the Greek. But when we looked at it in the Hebrew, we connected a lot of Hebrew words in Ephesians 2 back to Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 21. And
Yes.
we said, we said, hey, look, the passage here says you're no longer these foreigners, these strangers, or these aliens. Now, you're definitely part of the commonwealth. You're part of the citizenship. You have
Mm.
all rights now. You're like the native born. You're definitely as the native born. You've been
Mhm.
adopted into the household, and you're not no longer no stepchild at all. You
Right.
you have every last single right as if you were native born, right? And I said I was definitely going to get back into Ephesians 2, where we talked about the wall of partition. Now, before Moreh David goes in and goes all the way in, right? I'm gonna ask BA. Let's ask BA. BA or anyone in the chat. And shalom to Sister Saya. Shalom again, Brother Vinny. I'm gonna ask BA, what have you been taught as far as what this wall of partition meant back in your church days? What have you been taught, BA, that this wall of partition was or meant? Can you hear me, BA? Okay, maybe he needed to step away.
Yeah, he may have stepped away.
All right. So in the chat, you all can let me know what you have heard about what this middle wall or this wall of partition actually was and meant. You can tell me in the chat, right? And this is going to be very interactive. We are going to be flowing. We are going to be showing some sources, some references. You know me, evidence. Gotta show it and put it right in front of you, right? But you can let me know, right? Receipts. We're gonna show you that stuff. But you can definitely let me know what you have been told, or what you have been or what you have been thinking about when it comes to this wall of partition, right? When you get a chance. But I will say it. I was taught that this middle wall of partition meant that it was the Mosaic law. I was taught that it meant the instructions or the commandments that were given to Moses from the Most High Yod He Wahe. Right? That's what I was always taught. I was taught that the law of Moses or the commandments that the Lord God of Israel gave to Israel were the wall of partition. That's what I was told. That's how a lot of people read that verse when it comes to Ephesians 2. Now, ever since I started doing some digging into first century CE context, Hebraic historic understanding, I've been getting a little more comprehensive meaning when it comes to what that wall of partition is. Shalom, Mr. Blacktastic. Shalom. Thanks for coming back in. Thanks for having you on. So, with that being said, that's what we're going to get into right now, right? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to move this to the left here. I'm going to move this to the left. I'm going to share the screen, and we're going to have Moreh David read some verses from Ephesians 2. All right. All right. So, and Moreh David, sometimes he'll probably read from his own personal a book that he's reading from. Yes, he's not reading any translation, so that's why we have the Hebrew up. And as long as
he's
he
also
read,
old. He's also old, and he can't see very well. So we're going full disclosure.
So I can make the words bigger here for you or the audience, for everyone. Let me see.
Yeah, I think for the sake of those viewing, I think you can bump it up a little bit. Oh, that's beautiful.
You want it bigger?
Oh, that's nice. Oh, I'm loving that right there.
Okay.
I'm loving that.
So the way this website is structured, every time it gets bigger, the top portion, just gets bigger. Okay. And what's here on the screen? Right, yep. What's here on the screen is I'll have to move down more. But so Mr. Blacktastic, hey, you know that's trouble right there.
Yeah, I can't see the chat, but I know he's tearing it up.
Right. Oh my gosh. So we're gonna have Moreh David read mainly verses 11 to 16. Now the gist is Shaul is talking to the newfound converts who are over in the land of Ephesus, right? They're now believing in the Most High Yod He Wahe, coming into the fold of the covenant through Yeshua, the belief in the shed blood of Yeshua, right? Dying, being buried, and being resurrected. Now, Shaul is giving them some instructions and letting them know, hey, you used to be idol worshipers. You used to be distant or far off. Now you're saved by grace through faith, right? You're saved by a favor or a gift through the belief or the trust in the Most High Yahweh through Yeshua, right? And again, Yod He Wahe or Yahuwah, I don't mind, right? But we know who we're talking about. The Almighty Creator of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and humanity, right? So And Paul is continuing here. So that's why we're just picking it up at verse 11, and we're going to read all the way through verses 16. All right. So Hebrew, Yamin Achmol, right to left, right? So we're going to start from the right and work our way to the left. So Ephesians chapter 2, starting at verse 11.
Okay, so it reads, Al-ken zichru atem mahaya be'avar. In other words, therefore, all of you remember how that you, once in the past, goes on to say, atem you, hagoyim mavchina gufanit. So with respect of examining the body, you guys in the past, you were of the nations, or you were Gentiles with respect to examining the body. Okay, it says, Hanikraim oralim. You were called the uncircumcised, befi hanikraim nimulim, from the mouths of, or according to those who were called the circumcised. Can you scroll up just a little bit? There we go. Okay, it says, Asher milatam babasar ma'aseh yadayim hi. These are the people, more or less, that are called the circumcision based on the works of, according to the flesh or by the works of the hand. These are those who are called or considered the circumcised. Verse 12 says, Be'ota et, in that season, ha'itim b'li Mashiach, you were without the Messiah. Okay, key word coming up here, zarim, right where her cursor or marker is, zarim. You were okay, a couple of ways you can take this word, zarim. It can be rendered as a stranger or an absolute foreigner or an outsider, but an outsider from what? La'adat Israel, from, you are a stranger or a foreigner from the assembly, not just assembly, but it is the corporate assembly. It's like, I guess our fancy word today is commonwealth now, but it is the whole entire corporate. And another thing that's important about that word underneath, or where her cursor is below, adat, it is that all of these people that are a member of this one body, they are witnesses. Okay, witnesses. That's the root of that word with the ayin and the dalet there. So le'edat Israel v'nachrim. Okay, so nachrim is almost like a synonym. Okay, for zarim, it's almost like a synonym for it. Okay, it has a little bit of a nuanced meaning. Okay, but it's also a person that's from another land. It can also kind of be viewed as a foreigner. Okay, so there are nachrim v'nachrim lebritot. So you are strangers or outsiders to the covenants, plural. Lebritot, brit, one covenant, britot, to the covenants. Ha-havtacha, okay, the covenants and the promises, maftiach, havtacha. Ha-chusrei tikva, you are without hope. Ve'lelo Elohim ba'olam, and without the power or without God in the world. So as we can see, again, there is a distinction being made here. These are two different parties that are being laid out in front of us, and details about these different parties. Okay, so you have the circumcision, the nimulim, okay, that we saw in verse 11, and you have the orelim, which are those who are not circumcised. Okay, so the nimulim were not strangers to the covenant. They might not have been, as we know, walking it fully or seeing it in its fullness, but they were, members of the covenant. But on the outside, you have the oralim, and this is what he was saying, that the Ephesians, what they were at one point before being drawn near. Let's see. We're going to go back to, I guess, up to 13. Yeah, I think that's where I stopped. Aval ka'et, but now, b'Mashiach Yeshua, in Messiah Yeshua, atem harachokim be'avar. Okay, so harachokim be'avar, who were distant in the past. Avar is past. Okay, harachokim, rachok is distant or far away. So harachokim be'avar, those of you who were the distant ones in the past, Okay? Nihietim krovim. You have now been caused to be brought close. Okay? Don't sleep on that word krovim, because it means more, Sister Shanti. As you know, can't leave no. If you eat chicken wings, and you take that plate back to the kitchen too early, and them old folks see that meat left on the bones, they're going to tell you you're not
Right.
finished.
Right.
So so the
You got to
root
eat
word,
everything close to the gristle.
you got to get it down there. All right, got to
Right.
get it down. So krovim, the root word with a kaf, resh, and a vet, it's the same word for sacrifice. Karban. So to be brought near, in a sense, you have sacrificed something. You or you're in the process of sacrificing something in order to be brought near or to obtain that close proximity. Okay, let's see what the rest of the verse says. So you have been brought near al yedei dam hamashiach. So this is what's important, and we can scream this all day, all we want to, but the Christian world, the apologist world, are not going to hear us. It's almost like, I don't know what to call it, but here it is, plain as day. What is it that brought us near? Was it works of the flesh, or was it works of being obedient to commandments? No, it says Nitim krovim al yedei dam hamashiach. You are brought near by the blood. Dam is blood. Dam hamashiach. You are brought near by the blood of the Messiah. And what I like about, or what I love about the language of our forefathers is that if you see that phrase there right before the word dam, it says al yedei. Al yedei dam hamashiach. So al yedei literally means at the hands of. Okay, at the hands of, literally, Aliyad, Aliyadeh, Dam HaMashiach. So it's his blood that brought us near. Verse 14 says, and hu shlomenu. Therefore, hu shlomenu, not just our peace. And this is pivotal for verses like this to understand. We have cookie cutter, what I would say, cookie cutter words that are just kind of like the translation words, even though it's not saying that the word is wrong. What we're saying is that the classic translation of a word that we're used to adhering to, even though it might be right, there's something deeper and more. So shlomenu, you see that ending nu, it gives the connotation of us or our. Shlomenu, he is our wholeness. Shalem. Okay, this is where Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, comes from. So he is our wholeness. So if you think about it like this, if you are whole, you have peace. If you are not lacking, you have peace in any way. And this is the key to this verse, because again, we're talking about something or someones who have to be brought together. Okay. And they will be whole, or they will have that peace when they're whole. Okay. So hen hu shlomenu, therefore he is our peace. Hu asa et ha shnaim. So he has made et hashnaim, the two, le'echad. He's made the shnaim, or the two, as one. Veharas bivsaro et amichsat ha'eva. So by taking the two and making them as one, he has eradicated in his flesh the enmity, or the thing that caused. And this is where we have to stop briefly, and I want to hear from you, sister. I'm going to stop at this word here, because there are a lot of implications that are brought about by sloppy biblical study. And I'm not throwing shade. That's not my intention to be mean or throw shade at anyone. But when we make statements authoritatively about the word of the Most High, from those statements, based on what a given party might believe, we can make assumptions, or we can state factual things about what you believe. So if you are to say that this dividing wall that we're talking about is somehow the word of the Most High, then you have to agree that the word of the Most High has caused enmity between Israel and non-Israel. Yes? You would have to say that something that's holy, something that's just, something that's righteous is something that causes enmity. What's on your mind, sis?
Yeah, enmity is also hostility.
Mm-hmm.
Something that brings righteousness and justice and love and reward, right? I don't think it can be looked at as hostility or
No,
hatred,
no.
right? It's something that's liberating. Actually, it's it's something that's liberating. It's not nothing that's against us. It's not anything that's going to be oppressive to us, so to
Right,
speak, right?
right. Amen. Yeah, it proceeds from him. It proceeds from him. And then also along that same vein of thought, we also have to think about the fact that when we open our mouth and say that we've been freed from, as you say, people's assumption that this is the Mosaic law that's being spoken of, you're saying that the creator of the universe who loves you and created you put you in bondage first. Okay, he's a narcissist in your view because he put you in bondage first, then he released you from it, and now he wants you to praise and thank him for releasing you from something that he bound you with. Make that work somehow. Make that work. Okay, but I digress. So we stopped at okay.
The
So
end of verse
Shaman
14.
aside ha. Okay, aside ha et hashnaim echad. Okay, so 15. So verse 15, it says, "Who bitel? Bitel is to cancel out or to eradicate. Bitel. Okay, these are the same words of Yeshua in Matthew chapter 5 when he says. Al tachshevu shebati levatel. Don't even think shebati that I came levatel et Torah or et neviim. So bital to cancel out or to eradicate. So it says hu bitel et Torah mitzvot. Now here's what's important. Okay, because again, English can be just as jacked up as some translations can be. This isn't terribly bad. And the only reason why I won't say that this particular translation isn't terribly bad, because I think the very next word after mitzvot gets it right. Okay, so what did he cancel? Bitel et Torah mitzvot. Okay, so the instructions, commandments, she bechukim. She bechukim. So if you're not familiar with that word chukim, in its plural form or in its singular form, it's just chok, spelled with a chet, a vav, and a kaf, a kuf rather, I'm sorry. So a chok is something, we say all the time, we want to obey the Most High's mitzvot, chukim umishpatim. So we're saying mitzvot, his commandments, chukim, his decrees, right? And mishpatim, his judgments. So what is it about a chok that makes it a decree? I'll tell you why. Because the power, in this case, the ultimate power just gives it. And in a lot of cases, he won't even explain why. And you'll find this throughout the Torah. He has issued chukim, and in some cases, they're so confusing. He doesn't tell you why. The thing is, just do it, because I said so. And the biggest one is para aduma. It's the red cow. It seems to be an enigma of sorts, but do this. Don't worry about why. And he left it to us to try to fish through. So, sheba chukim. So these are decrees, in this case, given from the Most High Power, k'dei livrobo, in order to create in him atzmo, in himself, et hashnaim le'echad, the two into one, in order to create within himself, okay, the two into one. Chadash echad, okay, this is a new man. Le'adam chadash echad, into a new man, one singular new man, okay, uvekach la'asot shalom, and in doing so, makes wholeness or makes peace. We're going to do one more? Or
Yep, verse 16. Yep,
okay,
verse
so
16.
16. Oh, yeah, that's right. That kind of hammers it home. Okay,
Yep.
so uchdei shebaguf echad, okay, in order, uchdei, and in order, shebaguf echad, that in one body, ירצה את שניהם לאלוהים על ידי הצלב. So in that one, so that in order so that in that one body, okay, that the two of them can be brought to the Most High, or to the power, by way of Hatslav, the cross, by way of the cross or the execution stake, okay, Behamitobo et ha'eva. And on that execution stake, to put to death in him the enmity, to put to death the hostility in him by executing the hostility, okay, to execute the hostility that was between those who were once two separate groups but are now one.
Right.
Amen.
Amen. So we're going to talk about this hostility, this enmity. So I and Moreh David don't believe the hostility, as we said before, is the law of Moses given by Yod-Heh-Wahe to the children of Israel and to anyone that so will, right? Come on and serve the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, changed name to Israel, correct? So we don't
Amen.
believe that was the enmity. What I'm going to say is we believe the enmity was the hukat, or the decrees from what we would call the Pharisee rabbis, the Pharisaical rabbis, I call them, right? And the decrees that came from the rabbinical or Pharisaical rabbis were what we know and what Yeshua called the tradition of the elders, or the traditions of men, right?
Correct.
We're going to take an
Correct.
in-depth look at these traditions of the elders, or the traditions of men. If you go back to Mark 7, Yeshua said, you guys are nullifying, you're nullifying pretty much the written Torah with some of your traditions that you got from your elders. Now, all traditions are not bad. In this case, if they nullify the written word of the Most High Yod-Heh-Wahe, they are bad. But traditions are cool. We can make them up as long as they are in line and in tune and in right standing with what the Most High Yod-Heh-Wahe has given us. You agree with that, Moreh David?
Amen. Amen. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that proper name for that body of rules, as you mentioned in Mark chapter 7, it's called Mesoret Hazkinim. Mesoret. Okay, so Mesor is something that you transmit, all right? Hazkinim, it is the transmission of the bearded ones, is what it was called, and that's how you'll even hear it called properly in Talmudic writings and Mishnaic writings. Yeah, absolutely. But you are 100% correct.
All right. So, how many of you all know that there was actually a physical middle wall of partition in the temple? How many of you in the chat all know that there was actually a physical wall in the second temple? Second temple, right? Second temple after the southern kingdom, which is Benjamin, Levi, and Judah, right? After they settled in Judea, Jerusalem, they had the second temple, right? During the 1st century BCE, I believe this physical wall was erected. This wall is in the temple, and it's called a Soreg. It's called a Soreg. That is spelled, I think it's Samek Holamwa Resh Gimel.
Correct.
Okay, Moreh? Okay. It's a there. Okay, so let me okay, let's show the whole screen right here. So this is as big as I can make this picture here without distorting the words too much in the picture. Soreg. You see this I have the arrow going to this wall here. So this wall is like here. Follow the mouse cursor here, right? is your Soreg. This is the entire temple, second temple, right? And you have all these different gates that you go in. And Acts 3, it does mention the beautiful gate in Acts 3 when you go back and look at Acts chapter 3, right? But this is why we're talking about first century CE Hebraic historical context, right? So it says the Soreg. I'm reading this definition here about this middle wall of partition, this Soreg, right? The Soreg is a low latticed screen or railing. It prohibited Gentiles or non-purified Jews from entering the temple courts. Right. Before I talk anything more about the Soreg, I want to talk about Jews in the term Gentile during this time, first century CE, and Moreh David can back me up on this. So in the first century, after the southern kingdom came out of Babylonian captivity, they went back into this land here, right? Jews, in anyone inside of Judea, right? Anyone inside of Judea came to be known by who they worshipped. So those people in that land, their activity and their behavior solidified them being called Judean. And Judeans were those who believed, worshiped, and adhered to the Elohim or God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. All right. To anyone of the diaspora who did not live inside of the land, but they acted as though they were these people, they would be called Jews too. Why? Because they also worship the Elohim or God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, a lot of Jews today who are the ultra Orthodox and Orthodox, they are the ones who follow and worship the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they also believe in following the written Torah and the oral Torah as one. Torah means instructions, correct? So ultra Orthodox and the Orthodox, pretty much those who stem from the first Pharisaical rabbis, right? They believe in the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they believed in following the written law and the oral law as one and the same. So when they say law, they mean written and oral. When I say written, I mean Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, right? Now, like a Reformed Jew or Messianic Jew or who we would call ourselves today, right? In the first century CE context, we would be called Judean or Jews. Why? Because we follow the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. However, we only adhere to pretty much the written law. We don't necessarily decree that the oral law is a have to, and we don't decree that the oral law is on the same level as the written law. It's not a have to.
You know
Go
what?
ahead,
If I can interject, also you're spot on correct with this. I think there are a lot of people, and fairly so, there are a lot of people that are critical of even the possibility that there was some form of oral law given. A lot of people will tell you no, that there wasn't. Now, to the extent that modern Jewry pushes it, I don't believe on that level, because I do believe that the claim that the Most High gave Moshe a full-blown oral law, they use it kind of like as an excuse so they can push off. This is how Mesoret Hazkenim, the transmissions of the elders, gained so much traction. But what is important to note, I can't recall them off the top of my head, and shame on me, but in the book of Deuteronomy, there are a couple of places that throw up red flags and show you that there was something. Okay, because if it wasn't written down or recorded at all, well, I'm going to give you the example. The example in one of the places that I can recall is that it says that, okay, the Most High uses this phrase over and over again. In the place that I choose to have my name live. When I pick that place, of course, we know it's Jerusalem. But he says, if you can't make it, if you can't make it to that place to offer that animal because you're poor or you're whatever, or you're too far away, it says that you can kill that animal, present it before the Lord, and eat it and rejoice. But it says, kill the animal in the way that you have been told. Where is it? Where is it? It's not in the Torah anywhere. So there was and there's a couple of instances like this. There were exact prescribed methods in order to slaughter the animal yourself if you couldn't make it to the temple, but it's not written in the 5 books nor anywhere else. So there was something.
Right. And a lot of that something is definitely beneficial to learn to get the full understanding of first century CE context, especially when Yeshua is responding to the Pharisees who are trying to trip him up, test him. Right? Exactly. They're asking questions pertaining to their school of thought that was taught to them. You know, during that time, you have the school of Hillel, and then you have the school of Shammai.
Exactly.
And they clashed a lot, right? Exactly. So this Soreg, right? This Soreg prohibited Gentiles and non-purified Jews from coming out, from coming past this mark, right? Now I want to show you this here. See this stone right here?
Oh boy.
Oh.
I know what that is.
Oh. Can you tell them what? Can you tell the people what it is?
Okay, so this is the famous prohibition stone. Okay, and it has a stark warning on it. Now, I'm jealous because I'm pretty sure that Ashanti can definitely read this and make this out. But it has a prohibition on there for anyone who, and again, this is important, her words that she just used. It's a prohibition specifically for those who are not Judeans, okay, from attempting to cross over the wall and enter into that area. But also notice what Sister Shanshan said. She said that Gentiles and non-purified Jews, in that one way, they were treated exactly the same. And that's very key to understanding what the difference is between a goy, a goyim, a non-Jew, a Gentile, and a Jew.
Yeah, and also Moreh David, at this time, we're going to get into it, but the term Jew and non-Jew meant saved and unsaved.
Yes. Yes.
And we're gonna definitely get into that. We're just going slow, bit by bit, piece by piece.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
this was the prohibition statement, as Moreh David said. This was at that wall of partition, or the Soreg, in the Second Temple. And I have better here. What it says, right? Because I couldn't read that.
Nice.
But let's make this bigger for the people. All right.
Wow.
All right. This is BibleHistory.net, and you can actually look up Soreg, Soreg, middle wall of partition, or you could look up Soreg or middle wall of partition inscription. That's what it will be called, right? But it said no foreigner is to enter the barriers surrounding the sanctuary. He who is caught will have himself to blame for his death, which will follow.
Welcome.
Yeah.
It's like that warm. It's like you go to somebody's house and, before you want to judge, like we actually judge people. But, right before you knock on their door, you look down and that nice warm welcome mat.
Right.
And it's usually a calling card or a telltale sign of what you're going to find in the house. In this case, no welcome here. No welcome.
Right. So Gentile meant not one of us. Gentile meant during this time and current, which a lot of people use incorrectly. It means you are a worshiper of a foreign deity. You are an idol worshiper. That's what Gentile means, first century CE. And during this time, so it says, hey, you Gentiles, you can't come you can't come further past this point because you can't come further past this point because this point right here is the absolute epitome of holiness.
And then what was the primary worry? I mean, this takes us back to the QEMMT scrolls with the Dead Sea scrolls and
Man,
XYZ.
I got them up too.
What
Yep.
was the primary worry? The primary worry is not so much that you're going to break the protocols of the club and the bouncer's going to have to throw you out. The big issue is that you being unclean, again, whether you are an unpurified Judean or
Right.
you were someone who are outside of the covenant, you would come in, you would defile the temple, and that would bring about destruction. So their belief was that any type of breaking of the state of kedusha or holiness
Right.
would bring about instant destruction.
Right. And so they automatically called the Gentiles ritually impure. Correct, Moreh David?
Absolutely.
Unclean, ritually impure. And they said any Jew too, any Jew, you were ritually impure if you did not do what was solidified for the priest to do in Deuteronomy 30, right? You had to do these ritual washings, right? Or ablutions. Now, these ritual washings is not like what we do today when we go to the sink or when we go get some water and some soap, right? And we wash our hands. We just put the soap on our hands. No, this ritual washing, they had meticulous steps.
Yeah.
They had meticulous materials, right? Right, Moreh David?
Right, and it also had to be, and it definitely had to also be Maim Chaim, living water. It had to be. It had, this is why you had the source, the Gihon spring, that came from out of the city of David, because living water in that it had to be coming from a source, and it had to continue to flow on to somewhere else. Now, one of the funny things you'll hear, me spending a lot of time over in Israel, a lot of times you go to some of these places and they say that at one point the water, stopped moving. So it had become stagnant, and they said, they would make you get in this water and wash all off. But they say, you could walk by with a walking stick, and you can put that right in the middle of the water, and that stick would just stand up. So I don't think you would want to get any of it in your mouth. You don't want to get any at all, but you definitely don't want to get any of it in your mouth. So yeah, a lot of ritual value, but it was something that was pushed. This is why when you go up what they call the Temple Mount, and even down in the city of David area, you will find a lot of leftover from mikvahs, from ritual baths. I think you muted yourself, sis.
Yeah, I'm putting this up on the screen too. This is in the Talmud, right? The Talmud is.
Be careful.
Be careful. I'm going in the muddy waters, aren't I?
Yeah, be very careful.
There he is. I want to hear him.
Yeah.
That Talmud is taboo around here, man.
Well, one of the things I will say is this, before you go on, I think it's very important to understand. A lot of people have no concept even what the Talmud is. All right. So if someone, so people always ask me, do you believe in the Talmud? They give me that question, and I tell them it's not a proper question, okay? Because the Talmud is a collection of thought and commentary on the Bible over a long period of time from a lot of different people. So it's not one book. So you can't believe in it. No. There are parts of it that are just downright profane, just like some of the writings of your church fathers. Hello. Okay. But I don't see you ready to throw, these guys away as a whole because you run into one or two crackheads. All right. So yeah, they did have them. They did have them back in the day that said, gave opinions on things that were just way off and off base. So it being a collection of thought, it gives you a great place to start when you want to understand the thought processes of the
Right.
people before the time of Christ in
Right.
the Tannahistic period, and before him, before that period, the Rishonim and the Acharim, and on and on and on. You can see how they thought and why they thought about this thing this way and that way. So when something just becomes so taboo that you say no to it as a whole, guess what? You're hurting yourself from the standpoint of what Sister Shanti is so bravely and boldly, and Brother Abad too, what they're holding up here for the community. They're showing you the key to understanding some of the obscure fights that take place in the New Testament between not only Yeshua, but between Yeshua and between his disciples and the Pharisees. It is a huge key for that.
Yeah, and I also too want to mention that all Pharisees were not the same. Like I said, there was the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel at this time, so they were bumping heads. There was even fights which have been recorded in the Talmud, right? So I just wanted to show this real quick. The Soreg is mentioned in the Talmud. It's in the Midot. Midot is like what does it mean? Attributes or measurements for the temple, right? So it talks about this Soreg, right? How tall it was. It was pretty much it was like a little bit over 3 feet, just a little bit over 3 feet. And it said it had 13 breaches in it, like 13 breaks. They had originally been breached by the king of Greece. And they said, okay, when they repaired them, they enacted these Pharisaical rabbis, I call them. They enacted what you call the 13 prostrations. They made sure you bow down, and every time you approach one of these breaches, that you'll say a blessing to the Most High Yahweh, for them repaired. Brother Yeshaya said, "Who are the authors of the writings? Who are the authors of the writings of the Talmud?" Pretty much, well, Israel. You pretty much had the Pharisaical rabbis pretty much between the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, definitely during the time of when the Pharisees branched off and became the pious ones during the 2nd and 1st century CE. Excuse me, during the 2nd and 1st century BCE, right? So I know why that question is raised, and I will say this. The people who came up with some of these oral traditions, starting with Ezra and Nehemiah, the great men of the assembly, the Pharisees.
Yep.
This is the hue of skin they had.
Uh-huh.
And then the people who take on some of these oral traditions later on, who gravitate to them, they start looking more like this.
Yeah.
But the original people who wrote these things, they look like this.
Yeah. And it's so funny that when you say this now, and it's the truth, but it goes to show you that we have to be, as a people group, we have to be very careful, or we should be very careful. Because, see, we'll validate something if we think it came from someone who looked exclusively like us. We'll validate it. But as soon as it's something that runs up against our idea of what's right or wrong, we'll attribute it to someone that's white skinned. Well, like you said, surprise, surprise. We know, of course, now, which is probably something I shouldn't touch, but I'll just say briefly that we know at some point that during the time of the Maccabees and them expanding their territories, into Idumea, there were a lot of forced, conversions, and a lot of people became Judeans. A whole lot of people became Judeans. You look at pictures of renderings of Flavius Josephus. You look at renderings of Philo of Alexandria, and you see how they look. And they were not parent stock, but nonetheless, they did take on the yoke of Torah, and they took it on as a lifestyle. How you want to categorize them is up to you. But facts are facts.
Right. So this is another place you can go to within the Talmud. The Talmud consists of not just the commentary, but it consists of the Mishnah, which is the halakha, the oral traditions of how to walk something out, right? And then the Gemara goes into detail of how they came about with how to interpret these certain passages and come up with the meanings of how they were going to walk something out, right? This is Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah, it means foreign worship, right? Foreign worship, idolatry. And I'm just showing these as an example, right? Like Moreh David said, you can see the mindset of some of the Pharisees in the 1st century CE of how they thought about Gentiles, right? Watch this. This is Avodah Zarah, section 8a, right? It says it has been taught. Rabbi Ishmael says Israelites who reside outside Palestine serve idols, though in pure innocence. If, for example, an idolater, this is somebody they call the Gentile, right? An idolater gives a banquet for his son and invites all the Jews in his town, then even though they eat of their own and drink of their own, and their own attendant waits on them, Scripture regards them as if they had eaten of the sacrifices to dead idols, as it is said, and he will call thee, and thou wilt eat of his sacrifice. I believe that's in Exodus 34, right? Says, but does this not apply to actual eating? They're going back and forth having these reasonings amongst each other, right? So the question is posed after this person says this thing. It's like, but does this not apply to actual eating? And said Rabbah, if that were so, the verse would have only said, and thou shalt eat of his sacrifice. Why then say, and he will call thee? That extends the prohibition to the time of the participation. These are some of the things that they thought about Gentiles or idolaters. Let me go to another section here, and I'm going fast if you don't mind. But please go back into this video when when you're going back into the replay. Please go back into these sources. These direct sources, right? We're showing you 1st century CE context of what this middle partition was and what it meant. It was not just a wall, but it definitely had metaphorical meaning, figurative meaning, and we're showing you what these meanings are, right? We're going to go to now section 22a in the same tractate here, 22a. Let me go to it. Going pretty fast because it's a lot. Let's see, 22a. Yep, skipped it. I think I have it highlighted too. I tried to do that. Okay, watch this. 22a, Avodah Zarah. Yes, this is the Babylonian Talmud, sis. Cain. And actually, you can actually go see this entire Talmud. You can download each tractate in PDF form from halakha.com. HALAKHAH.com. Halakha.com. Again, HALAKHAH.com. You can see this entire thing. All right. So this is Avodah Zarah 22a. It says this is the Mishnah. This is their halakha. It says one should not place cattle in heathens' inns. This is the Gentiles. This is Gentiles, idolaters, foreign worshipers, people who do not follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember, that's what Gentile meant, right? So when people say Gentile church or Gentile Christian, that is an oxymoron. Because Gentile, remember, it meant a non-worshiper of Yahweh, right? So you can't say, oh, a non-worshiper of Yahweh who follows Christ. Nah,
Doubling down.
Yeah. Definitely not, right? So it says one should not place cattle in heathens' inns because they are suspected of immoral practice with them. A woman should not be alone with them because they are suspected of lewdness, nor should a man be alone with them because they are suspected of shedding blood. Now, hint, hint, this is what Peter was being accused of in Acts 10, right?
Oh, boy.
Remember in Acts 10, Peter was like, hey, the law says we shouldn't even eat with the Gentiles or even come into their houses. Oh, you see where he's getting it from? He's getting it from this Talmud. He's not getting it from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
So now that's beautiful. If you don't mind, because you might have this one, but I want to interject one from the Mishnah.
Okay.
You might have this one already, but the one that you have, I have it on my phone right here on Sefaria, on the website Sefaria. But now, just as the one that you're speaking of speaks to Acts chapter 10, specifically Acts chapter 10, verse 38. Okay, again, here is a classic example where in Christendom, there
Yeah.
is this idea where they just want to, they're so antinomian, they want to interject the Torah or the law of Moses into a situation where this has not taken place. Okay, so what was the big deal in Acts chapter 10? Peter was being told to go to the house of Cornelius, right? Who was someone who was outside of the covenant, okay? Again, according to the sects of that day, you had to be acceptable to them. But he was, first and foremost, he was from the nations physically. So uh, he says in there, this is Peter's words, how it is unlawful for one that is a Jew to enter into the house of one that is a Gentile. Where is that? Not in the Torah. But if you
Right.
look, okay, it's Mishnah Oholot 18.
Oh, I'm going there. I already got it. I already got it right here. Boom.
Good.
Let's go.
Girl,
There
you must be psychic.
Hey, I got all the bases covered.
So yeah, you got those bases covered. So I'll wait for you to. Oh, you have it there.
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay.
Please.
So it says, oh, good, you got it in English because I was going to have to chew through the Aramaic. So it says basically, if one buys a field in Syria near to the land of Israel, if it can be entered in cleanliness, okay, it is deemed clean and is subject to the laws of tithes and sabbatical year produce, okay? Shvi'it is what it's called in Aramaic, Shvi'it. Okay, so that means that he can enter into that land. If he can do so into that place, he can enter in cleanliness. It's declared clean, okay, but whatever the land yields, he has to give of the sabbatical, of the Shemitah, and he also has to give of the produce of the land, okay? Flip side, but if it cannot be entered into cleanliness, it is deemed unclean, although it is still subject to the laws of tithes and Shvi'it and the sabbatical year produce. Here's the key here. The dwelling places of heathens or the dwelling places of Gentiles are unclean. This specifically is what Peter is citing when he says, how it is unlawful for one that is a Jew to enter into the house of one that is a Gentile. Here it is. It's plain as day right in front of you, because this predates Peter. This predates even the advent of the Mashiach himself.
Definitely. Yeah. We're giving you a gist of how the Judeans, the Jews at this time, felt about Gentiles. See, let me say this, Moreh David. Watch this. The Babylonian captivity, right? When the southern tribes went into Babylonian captivity for 70 years, when they came out of Babylonian captivity, they blamed the Gentiles for their downfall and their exile. So they was like, you know what? That's it. The Gentiles, you're the blame. We're not taking accountability and ownership for us breaking the covenant that we said to the Most High Yod Hey Wah Hey that we would keep. You know what? No, we're not going to take accountability. We blame it on you. Right? So they did everything that they could to keep the Gentiles out, who they blamed for their exile and their downfall. You wanted to add something real quick, Moreh David?
Oh, I was going in to yeah. So, I can't help it. I'm sorry. Just count it. Just think of it as me having some form of Tourette's. Okay.
Yes.
So what happens today when we find people? I don't know. They might look like you and I. They might share our hue. They might share our hair texture and whatnot. But instead of owning, okay, out of one side of our mouths, we'll say, well, our state of being, is directly related to the sins of our forefathers. Okay, breaking the covenant and X, Y, and Z. We'll say it and we'll say, yeah, and we'll high five and we'll say hallelujah. Okay, but then on the other side of it, we look to blame other people, just like the people we're reading about right now. We look to blame other people for our downfalls, like one of my favorites. Somebody stole my identity. Somebody stole my identity and they have something that belongs to me. Okay. And, I asked the question where? Show me where Scripture says that someone's going to come along and steal your identity and take it away from you. Explicitly or implicitly, the burden of proof is on you to show me that. So it's easy to point and say those people and those people and those people. But what about you? What about grandfather? What about great-great-grandfather? How about this? That's not our only example of us having a history of doing this. So there are some, the part of the greater Torah keeping world now, whether they're family stock or not, that's not the point. But what they do is whoever has power at a given time, he who has the gold makes the rules, right? So, for example, when the golden calf popped out, they said it was the Erev Rab, it was the mixed multitude that caused the whole thing, right?
Oh.
Somehow the minority is going to cause the whole crowd to do X, Y, and Z. They pulled the gun on Aaron and made him throw all those earrings in, and the golden calf popped out. One of my favorites, last example of just shirking responsibility that we seem to want to pick up now and burn energy on other people, is when Yosef goes into Mitzrayim and he marries the priest of On's daughter. You know what a lot of people who got their hands on the books end up saying? Well, it wasn't the priest of On's daughter really, right? See, what they don't want to deal with is that a brother who looked like me went into Egypt, married a fine sister, and had a couple of little brown fellows, one of which Ephraim eventually will become the fullness of the nations, right? He will become eventually the fullest of the nation. But what they said that in the commentaries, you'll see that they say it was Dinah, the sister who was raped, and that somehow she went to Egypt and she was adopted by the priest of On. So they can push the notion of a white Joseph and a white Dinah being adopted by a white priest of On so that they can keep a false bloodline clear. So I digress.
Right. No, you didn't digress. You added right along to what needed to be said. Thank you very much. That's why we have you here. See? See, the Jews, and I'm going to talk more about that term Jew, right? But the Jews wanted to keep the Gentiles out. They wanted to keep them out of the epitome of holiness, right? And it's crazy because, well, let me show this. Let me show this now. How's that? Let's bring this over here. Yep. I wrote this up. Looking at all of the verses here, we find in the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, or the instructions, the prophets, and the writings, right? I wrote what is for the ger. That's translated stranger, right? A lot of people say because they don't see the word Gentile, or they don't see what's translated as Gentile, because as Moreh David, you've been hearing, Goyim. Goyim means nations. And a lot of times you see Goyim, the Hebrew word for nations, you see it translated into English sometimes as Gentiles, as heathens, right? But in the Torah, the foreigners, the sojourners, the aliens, they would be called strangers, right? Now, what the Pharisaical rabbis did during the first century CE, they definitely went against the written Torah, and how are they going to be a light? How they're going to be a light to the nations, as Isaiah 42 says? How are they going to be a light to the nations when they're going against what the Most High told them to begin with? This is what happens when you go into captivity for 70 years, right? You got new generations being born. You got some of the elders who have died off. They don't have anybody to tell them better at times, right? So they start making stuff up, and they just get more pious. So what they've done is just disregarded some of the things that were open to the mixed multitude, or to the people who were not native born to the land, right? You see all these things in Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, right? You see the stranger, as part of the congregation of Israel, must keep unleavened bread. Exodus 12:19. I'm not going to read all of these, just some of these, right? This is the kicker. Exodus 23, verse 12. The stranger is to rest on the seventh day, which is the Shabbat, right? Stranger must keep the Day of Atonements or Yom HaKippurim in Leviticus 16 and 29, right? I like this. Leviticus 17, 8 and 9. Numbers 15, verse 14. The stranger can and must bring a sacrifice. Leviticus 18 and 26. The stranger is not allowed to do any abominations. That includes idolatry, worshiping a foreign deity other than Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, right? Watch this. I love this one. Leviticus 19 and 34. Strangers are like the native in that they are to be protected, not oppressed, and loved as the native loves himself. Right? Leviticus 24 and 22. There is one manner of justice for the stranger and the native. And I like this one. Deuteronomy 16, 10 to 14. The stranger shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, and the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. This is the dagger after dagger after dagger after dagger. I'm gonna read two more. The stranger must hear the Torah being read once every 7 years. That's in Deuteronomy 31. And watch this. In Ezekiel 47. I don't know if y'all even saw this. Ezekiel 47, 22 and 23. The stranger in whatever tribe they sojourn gets a divided lot of inheritance in which they are like the native born. You wanted to say something, Moreh David?
No, I don't have to. I mean, you're pulling things right out of my brain and right off of my notes, literally. I don't have all of those, but I have a few of those because I was scrambling to try to remember and find some of those. But again, it's just back to the thought of the idea, or not the idea, but understanding these designations. Jew, Gentile, someone who's inside of covenant, someone who's outside of covenant. A wall, okay, that was put up, a literal wall that was put up. But I would say that it's kind of cold-blooded in that the wall is short enough to where you can look over into what you might desire for someone who's seeking truth and seeking to be a part. You can see it, but you can't go. I think that's kind of cold-blooded. If you're going to build a wall, it should be, 20 feet high. But the wall in and of itself, even though Paul is referencing the wall, but I believe that he's referencing the Soreg, but he's referencing it as a result of the sickness of the Judeans at that time. It is a byproduct of their misunderstanding of the word. So the Masoret Hazkinim, or the transmissions of the elders, it is that wall. But what Paul did in a very brilliant way was he took the Soreg, okay, and he used the Soreg to parallel it with those man-made decrees in order to show, what it was doing internally, causing the enmity and the hostility, but also literally what it was doing. And, we could go on for a million years talking about the fact that you turned around and added something to the construction of the temple that's not a part of the command that was given. So you transgressed on a lot of ways. Yeah.
Right. They did transgress. They did transgress a lot, nullifying the written Torah, as you were saying, by the Soreg. It's crazy that it was like you're saying, you can get over the wall easily. Over 3 feet is not tall at all, right? Right. So, with that being said, so Jew versus non-Jew, Jew versus Gentile, Jew and Gentile. Watch this. So during this time, the Pharisaical rabbis in Israel, right? They were the main people teaching, right? In Matthew 23, Yeshua said, "Hey, the Pharisees and the scribes sit in the seat of Moshe," right? He said, "All that they say, do, but don't do as they do."
There it is. Yeah.
Right? Because they tell you and then don't do. Why? Because when they're sitting in the seat of Moshe, and correct me if I'm incorrect, Moreh David, please. When they're sitting in the seat of Moshe, they're supposed to read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But also, what they were doing is they would get out the seat,
Hmm.
right, and go on about living their oral law. They
Right.
would go on about living their tradition of the elders,
Hmm.
right? That's what
You're
they
right.
would do. And the
Correct.
tradition of the elders, it did bear heavy burdens on the people,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
the Pharisaical rabbis and their teachings uh, uh to Judeans for the most part, they were the it factor. Their teachings were the ones that had heavy authoritativeness in this time, right? So they believed in salvation. Now, when I say salvation, that's righteousness or justification, right? So when I say when it says something's accounted to you for righteousness, that also meant justification or being justified or salvation or being saved, right? Those are synonyms. Okay? So watch this. The Judeans or the Jews at this time, right? They believed in national salvation. They believed you had to be a part of the people group, and in order to be a part of them, you had to come through their if you wanted to be a part of the covenant, which secured them to them their salvation, you had to become one of them. You had to become Jew or Israelite as a nationality, not an ethnicity. So during this time, first century CE, it more so not necessarily was about you being native that would get you salvation, or it's not necessarily so you being native that you could be called a Jew. They're to say that if you want national salvation, the Jews are going to get national salvation or justification or righteousness and be in this world to come and be in this kingdom, right? So they're saying anybody who wants to be in this kingdom and serve the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you have to convert over to being a Jew to get national salvation, right? They were saying you had to convert to being a Jew to be saved, to get into the new kingdom, the new city of Jerusalem, to get in the world to come, as they would call it. Do y'all understand that? I'm saying it over and over, and I'm going slow because I want you to understand the first century CE perspective of the Pharisaical rabbis during this time. This is straight up history. I know some people in the chat are saying, "No, that ain't what this is, and that ain't what this is." Let them go ahead and say it. Let them go ahead and say it. You know why? Hey, it's on them. It's on them. But this is first century CE. This is
Right.
first century CE.
Hmm.
This is not second century, third century, fourth century when the church baby daddies come along and try to
Right.
give you their version,
Right.
right? That ain't what this is. Church baby daddies. You know, that's what Mr. Black Tastic calls them.
Oh God.
I had
Yeah,
to
and
say it.
you
Go
you
ahead.
you,
Go ahead.
you
Go ahead,
you're
Morey.
right. You're right. You're right. Again, ha'olam haba, in the world to come. This is why, when you hear again, you wouldn't even think, a lot of people who aren't in the know, they wouldn't even think that that world outside of people who didn't, well, the people who didn't believe in Yeshua did believe in, a coming world where there would be a brand new Jerusalem that came down from out of heaven, that it would be the center, Merkaz Olam, the center of the world, and that, like Isaiah says, Tetzea Torah, that the Torah would go out from this place in the end of days. So, when you read John and you see him talking about a new heaven coming down and da 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 da, guess what? People outside of the belief of Messiah believe the same thing as well. They just skewed from the standpoint of when the one that came that Moshe wrote about, you said, nah, we kind of like our system, our own system. We're going to take it and we're gonna keep it. So yeah, what you're saying, again, um, it's true, but it's just tough for a lot of people. And what I'll say lastly, it's tough for a lot of people to accept again because you know we have so much angst and hate to cut past. And we only hurt ourselves and we only maim ourselves when we get the slightest idea that something that's written down comes from, again, someone who doesn't look like us. Now, see, people get mad and get bent out of shape when they hear the term skin doctrine. But guess what that is? As soon as you think something is coming from somebody else that don't look like you, in a lot of cases, you're wrong about it.
Yep.
But also in some other cases, does it really matter overall? No. The Most High has used a lot of different people in a lot of different time frames. I was having a conversation not long ago with a brother out at the marina who was out there preaching primarily to the seagulls, right? Because folks are driving away. They didn't want to hear it. They thought he was crazy. But I mean, he's one of our folks. And he's out there, preaching the kingdom is coming, and our disconnect cut off. He was all good with me until I explained to him that the Most High has used a lot of different people groups to hold certain things down. And you know where I'm going, Shanti.
Yep.
You know exactly
Yep.
what I'm talking about from the standpoint of, think about it. Okay, at one point, all of the Sfaradim are getting just stomped to death in Spain and Portugal. They're getting sold into slavery. They're having their children taken away from them. They're being deported to, Sao Tome, Principe, the west coast of Africa. Their kids are being taken and raised, as you guys know a lot of this history, in quote unquote Christian homes. Then you have the Mizrahim, who've always been in the Far East, who were kind of like cut off from everybody and obscured, right? This is why the whole world was shocked when they first saw the pictures of the Temanim, the Yemenite people, and go, holy cow, look at all them black folk.
Right.
But then during that time period, all of the writings that you and I are sharing right now, make a wild guess as to who it was that preserved those writings. Make a wild guess as to who it was that smuggled Torah scrolls across one border to another border, hiding them away when the Mohammedans were coming in and burning up everything. Guess who it was? A lot of people who are standing in places teaching Torah, again, whether they're parent stock or not, standing and teaching their students Torah, and the magistrates of the town come in, wrap them in that Torah scroll, and burn them to death. So again, we can buy into a whole lot of things and we can just run with it because we have the one thing we have in common is the fact that we're all mad. Okay, but as I posed a question to you, Shanti, earlier, or was it the other day we were talking? I said to you, who are all of these angry people with long beards? Who are they really angry at? Yeah. Are you angry with who it was that supposedly stole your identity? And again, give me some scripture. Are you mad at the people who supposedly stole your identity, or are you mad at the one who allowed it?
Come on.
I think you're mad at God. Okay, I think you're mad at the Most High, and you ain't gonna win that battle. So good luck with that.
They're gonna be like the male was in the garden, like, man, hey, why, hey, see this woman you gave me, right? You. But they don't want to admit that's what's going on in their hearts, right? So that's why it's time to examine our hearts. Mm-hmm. It's really time to examine our hearts if we really want the sincerity, the sincere milk of this word. That's what we're trying to get to. Why? Because we love the Most High Yahweh and we love the Most High Yahweh's people, right? So Jews at this time believed in national salvation, and salvation was the idea that their salvation meant that the kingdom was restored in that they would not be under foreign rulership or oppression, that this priestly king would just come in, bring wholeness and completeness or peace after kicking some tail, winning these wars, right? So they were like, well, we got to start following all these commandments. We got to start following all this Torah. We got to do these things to keep these Gentiles out because these Gentiles are the ones, they're the blame for us going into captivity. So what do? They start putting up these fences. And what are the fences called? The tradition of the elders, the traditions of men, the ones or some of the ones Yeshua talked about in Mark chapter 7 and Matthew 15, right? And then and the ones I did a whole lesson on that. It's called Yeshua's Replies to First Century Rabbis, where I go into more areas of the Talmud, of the Mishnah, and the Gemara, and I show you why the Pharisees were asking Yeshua certain questions. It's because of some of their beliefs. And in order to see some of their beliefs, you definitely got to go into the Talmud just to see them. And I'm not saying go into the Talmud to start adhering to it. I'm saying go look at it as a historical record of these people who had this mindset, right? Who were reasoning amongst one another, right? So they said, hey, we got to add these things. We got to add these fences, right? So now one of these fences is, what did I say? You got to become, they said you got to become, if you want to be a part of the covenant and get salvation, you have to be one of us. And in order to be one of us, you have to go through conversion process. And that's where you get circumcision from. So circumcision, when Paul's talking about it in certain passages, especially Ephesians 2, right? And in Galatians, right? He's talking about circumcision as an idiomatic a word, right? Or a euphemism for conversion, their process to get in the world to come, or to get in the kingdom, or to get salvation, or to get saved, or to be justified, right? Remember, Paul said, though, you don't get saved, you don't get justified, you don't get salvation by doing the works made with hands. You get saved by believing in the shed blood of Yeshua, who we believe Yeshua is the core nucleus embedded in the written Torah, right? I know I'm going slow.
Let's go. You're good. You're
Okay,
talking real good.
Thank you. So I'm gonna bring this up now. Y'all gonna like this. This is Tractate Yevamot, and Yevamot comes from Yebum, levirate marriage, right? If I'm recalling correctly, levirate marriage, right? And they had this whole little conversion process, right? For the men and for the women. We'll read a little bit of what it said for the women to be converted, right? But they're saying, in order to be one of us, excuse me, in order to be saved, you don't believe in Yeshua, but the Pharisaical rabbis were saying, in order to be saved, in order to receive salvation, in order to be justified, you have to convert to one of us through circumcision, right? Paul said, no, that's not what you do. You believe in the shed blood of Yeshua, whom is the core, who is the core of the nucleus of the Torah, right? Watch this. I'm going to read this to you guys. Or Moreh David, you want to read it? I have the whole thing highlighted. You can read it.
Okay.
And when I get to the bottom of where it says unable to bear, I'll scroll down and we'll continue. And
okay. Can you hit that? Can you get one more bump up on that resolution?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because see, when my nostrils are up like that,
crazy.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
You need me to bump it up some more?
I can see that.
Let me see if I can make it. Let me see if I can make something up here. 30.
Yes. Oh yes, that's beautiful.
Okay, let me scroll over a little bit.
Hallelujah.
Oh, that's
yes. All right. Yeah, you came through on that one.
Right.
All right. So it says our rabbis taught, if at the present time a man desires to become a proselyte or a convert, he is to be addressed as follows. What reason have you for desiring to become a proselyte? Do you not know that Israel at the present time are persecuted and oppressed, despised, harassed, and overcome by afflictions? If he replies, I know, and yet am unworthy, he is accepted forthwith and is given instruction in some of the minor and some of the major commandments. He is informed of the sin of the neglect of the commandments of gleanings, the forgotten sheaf, the corner, and the poor man's tithe. He is also told of the punishment for the transgressions of the commandments. Furthermore, he is addressed thus: be it known to you that before you came to this condition, if you had eaten sweat, you would not have been punishable without or with kareth. If you had profaned the Shabbat, you would have not been punishable with stoning. But now, were you to eat suet, you would be punished with karet. Were you to profane the Shabbat, you would be punished with stoning. And as he is informed of the punishment for the transgressions of the commandments, so is he informed of the reward granted for their fulfillment. He is told, be it known to you that the world to come was made only for the righteous, and that Israel at the present time are unable to bear.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Unable to bear either too much prosperity or too much suffering. He is not, however, to be persuaded or dissuaded too much. If he accept it, he is circumcised forthwith. Should any shreds which render the circumcision invalid remain, ouch, he is to be circumcised a second time, double ouch. As soon as he is healed, arrangements are made for his immediate ablution. When two learned men must stand by his side and acquaint him with some of the minor commandments and with some of the major ones, when he comes up after his ablution, he is deemed to be an Israelite in all respects.
Right. So this is Yevamot 47a and 47b. So when Moreh David said suet and
Correct.
what was it? Karet. Suet, I believe that means forbidden fat.
It does.
Right. Mm-hmm. And karet means cut off.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Now I don't know if y'all. And ablution. Ablution means the ritual washing. Right. Mm-hmm. The ritual washing or the bathing. Right. Or the mikvah or something like that. Right.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Watch this. It's saying after this person accepts what is being told, he is circumcised. Right. He's circumcised, and then what? He's an Israelite or a Jew in all respects. So
whoever he was from before is gone. It's gone, and it does not matter. His nationality, his affiliation with whomever is gone. And in most cases, he also changed. His name was always changed as well. Mm-hmm.
Right
now, just as a little side note here. Since there were so many sects of what we would call Judaism in the first century, even though it wasn't necessarily called that so much, there were many sects. And in a lot of cases, not just the Pushim or the Tzodkim, the Essenes and on and on and on, the Qumrani. In a lot of cases, the varying sects did not accept the proselytization process of the other. For example, some were more strenuous, some were a little more liberal, as with the House of Hillel, which is why the House of Hillel and Shammai always bumped heads. But the Qumrani, their process was about a 2-year process, but it pretty much mirrored exactly what you're sharing here. You get the little baby things, right? Sounds like Acts 15. Sorry, I don't want to mess with that. But you get the little baby things first. And then as you go along, okay, and you make the transfer, then you get the heavier things later.
Right. So this circumcision or this conversion process here, Brother David said this phrase before. Oh, what's that? 4QMMT.
Well, look at there.
See, I be trying to have certain receipts, Moreh David. I try to have certain receipts, right? MMT. MMT is an acronym stand for Miksad Maaseh HaTorah. Some of works of the law, right? That's an idiomatic phrase. It's an idiomatic phrase in what we were talking about. The conversion to be saved, the conversion process to be saved. So when Paul is talking about circumcision and uncircumcision, it has to do with works of the law. Works of the law are what? The circumcision or the conversion process to be saved, to be in the kingdom, to be declared righteous, to get into the world to come, right? I'm just going to read a little bit of this, right? But if you guys want any of these PDFs that I have, hit me up in my email, duckanddodge1@gmail.com. I put it in the description box, and I also put it in the post where I shared the live for today, right? This is from this is from the Qumran, the Qumran scroll, right? The Qumran community, right? And this idiomatic phrase was definitely known to a few of the sects, and a few of the sects, SEC, TS, definitely knew about each other. In point of fact, it's deemed that a section what I'm going to read was written by the Qumran community to the Pharisees, right? I'm going to scroll down a little bit, but to read it. But if you read some of this, this is also uh, where it talks about what's considered the Gentile can't do, you know, what you can and cannot take from a Gentile and stuff like that. So remember, Gentile means not one of us. Gentile means you are a foreign worshiper of another deity that's not Yod He Wahe. That's what Gentile means. And you also learn that Gentile Christian or Gentile church is an oxymoron, right? All right. Let me scroll down to the bottom of this. I want to read this section right here. All right. It says, remember David, that he was a man of piety, and that he was also saved from many troubles and pardoned. Do I need to make this bigger? Let me see if I can make these words bigger. Let me go to.
I can actually see that. At least I can.
Okay. Let me go to. Let's go to 50%. Let me read it all over here. Okay. It says I kind of took this picture at an angle, huh? Remember David, that he was a man of piety, and that he was also saved from many troubles and pardoned. We have also written to you concerning some of the observances of the law. What the observances of the law, or Niksat Maseh Hatara, which we think are beneficial to you and your people. For we have noticed that prudence and knowledge of the law are with you. Understand all these matters and ask him to straighten your counsel and put you far away from thoughts of evil and the counsel of Belial. Consequently, you will rejoice at the end of time when you discover that some of our sayings are true. What's this phrase right here? And it will be reckoned for you as righteousness when you perform what is right and good before him for your own good and for that of Israel. So it will be reckoned to you for righteousness in the terms of some of the Essenes and some of the Pharisees. What they deemed righteousness was what? Conversion, circumcision, to be saved and get into the kingdom. But what did Paul say? What did Shaul say? No. What's actually reckoned to you for righteousness or salvation is to what? Believe in Yeshua's shed blood, which is the door to get into the kingdom, to get into Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem, to be saved, to have salvation, to be righteous.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, you know, worth noting also is the fact that, again, you know, in some of our pre conversations, we talked about how, you know, you can have terms that are used interchangeably now in modern times, and everybody thinks it's just the same thing. You know, so the term circumcision is a people group, as we saw when we read the Nimulim, that it's a people group. Circumcision is also the physical act of whittling away, pun intended. And then circumcision, also the process of taking one from the nations and making them a part of corporate Israel. So, you know, you hear of Paul making statements like those who are engaging in mutilation of the flesh. And again, those from the Christian world, again, wrongly assume that he's beating up the process of circumcision. But we just read here how they said if any shred of flesh was left over, that it had to be done again, right? So the statement that Paul is making when he says those who are engaging in the mutilation of flesh, what he's saying is that they want to take you through their bigoted form of conversion in order to make you a notch on their belt. And because of their kavanah, or their intention, which is wicked, that's all they've done for you in essence. So if you allow yourself to be proselytized, if you allow yourself to be circumcised in order to become one of these groups, you have fallen from grace. Why? You've fallen from grace because we know that our standard, Abraham Avinu, we know that Abraham, our standard, was declared righteous before he was even circumcised. So he's not saying don't get it, don't do it. What he's saying is that understand the agency that makes you justified. Okay, Abraham believed, okay, v'nachshev, it was counted to him, litzdaka, for salvation. And in the same way, him being a father, what did he do? He, in turn, as Stephen said in his speech in Acts chapter 10, he in turn circumcised his son Isaac. And then you notice Paul pretty much follows the same standard, right? Because again, you notice those who were after the generation that did not believe died off. The people with Joshua could not cross into the land until they were all circumcised. The males all had to be circumcised because that circumcision was tied into inheritance and entering into the promise. Okay, so the greater Torah keeping world mistook that to mean only that on that corporeal, level. They missed the greater meaning. So in keeping with that, Paul turned around and acting as a father to Timothy, just as Abraham did to his own son Isaac, he, was not compelled from the standpoint of being compelled to take part in a bigoted. And by the way, Igbo, the Igbo people who have been, declared by this Beit Din, that same bigoted conversion will be expected of them.
Yeah. Right. I do want to go back to Yevamot 47b and talk about what it meant for how a woman in the Pharisaical rabbi's mind, how she would convert or be a proselyte over to be a Jew or over to be saved, so to speak, right? It says, in the case of a woman proselyte, women make her sit in the water up to her neck while two learned men stand outside and give her instruction in some of the minor commandments and some of the major ones. The same law applies to a proselyte and to an emancipated slave, and only where a menstruant may perform her ablution, her ritual washing, may a proselyte and an emancipated slave perform this ablution. And whatever is deemed an interception in ritual bathing is also deemed to be an interception in the ablutions of a proselyte and emancipated slave and a menstruant. Right? All right. You can further read this, but I'm not going to, right? Where we talk about this whole conversion process, right? I just wanted to read a little bit of it. But I'm pretty much done with this lesson. All praise to the Most High Yahweh. Ko Tehelim, Ko Kabul, Wahati Fedet, Le Yahweh Avinu, Eloheinu. All praise to Yahweh. All praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, our Father, our Elohim, our deity, our power.
Amen.
I do, before I end this, I want to formally say shalom to the people I didn't get a chance to say shalom to. And then I believe there's a couple of questions people had and that they wanted you to answer, Moreh David. So I think I said shalom to Brother Jermaine, shalom, Brother Josh, shalom, Sister Deborah. Thank you for tuning in. Tony, thank you for joining in. Surreal, thank you for joining in, even though you disagreed. Thank you for joining in. Let me see who else here. Who else we have here? Brother David, it's always a pleasure to have you in, Brother David. Me and you got to chat, please. If you could get to me some way, somehow on the messenger, or phone number or something, please do that because I miss talking to you, my brother. That's Brother David. Brother Ernest Higgs, thank you again for tuning in. Sister Jeanette, thank you, Jeanette. Sister Jeanette, I owe you.
In a lot of ways.
Yes. I owe you lunch, something. What you need? What you need, sis? What you need, girlfriend? I got you.
Yes. Yes.
Benjamin Azan Yisrael, thank you for joining in. And Yahweh Shema, thank you for joining in. Sister Deborah had a question. Let me stop the screen share here. Sister Deborah had a question. And she asked if the karet is the same as the karet in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, I believe.
Well, I know. I'm going to take a look at that right now. 924, you
Okay.
said?
Yeah, 924.
So, hidden technology, great. There's an app for
Right.
that.
You want me to bring it up on the screen too in the Hebrew? I can do that.
You can. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, see, boy, I got some catching up to do. So 924. Okay. Shavuim Shivaim Nechtach Alamecha Ve'al Ir Kadeshecha. Okay. Lechalea Pesha. Chataru Lechaper Avon. Okay. To atone for sin. Uleavit Sedek Alamim. I think in the Hebrew Bible it's a little bit different. It might be 26. So she had 924. Mine
Yeah.
might be a little bit different.
Sis Deborah, can you copy and paste the actual the entirety of the verse you're talking about? Because the numbering system is different in Hebrew than it is in English. And I will say this again. Moreh David is not reading from a translation. He reads Genesis to Revelation in the Hebrew. Yeah, he has no right.
Knock it off. You're gonna make me blush.
No, he's not reading from no interlinear. I just gotta let that be known.
Oh, wait a minute. So I still don't see the word yet. I've looked at 24. Let's see. I'm looking at 25 right now.
Okay. I'm trying to get my computer to hurry up so I can get you the Hebrew. Okay. I got
okay, 26. It's 26 for me.
And verse 26. Okay, let me pull this over here. And put this over here. And I'm gonna share the screen real quick so everybody can see. Hold on. Okay, so it's Daniel 9 and 26 what she's talking about. Okay, let me pull it up on the screen real quick. Mm-hmm. So it's 9 and 26. You need me to make the consonants bigger, or are you just gonna read from?
I'm gonna read it right off of my Tanakh app here.
Okay, I'm gonna try to follow along with you.
Okay.
And let me get back up there. Okay.
All right. So verse 26 it says ve'acharei hashavuim. Okay. So and after, well, we have to put it all together first. Ve'acharei hashavuim shishim ushnaim. So after 62 weeks, Yikaret will be cut off, Mashiach. Okay, ve'ein lo, and not for himself. Ve'ha'ir hakodesh yashchit, and the holy city will be destroyed. Okay, am nagid haba. So the ruler of the people who are to come will be responsible for this destruction that's coming. So yeah, Yikaret. Yikaret is the word. Literally means to slice or to cut. It's related. It's almost a synonym, just like the word brit, like a covenant. Okay, and it means to slice, cut, or literally in the sense to kill, to cut one person off. So it is in fact the same word. That's correct.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
So the same word we saw. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say for the people, because again, I can't see you people that are in the chat. But again, my greetings and blessings and well wishes for everyone that's in the chat that did take time, because we know how valuable time is to hang out with us. And again, we might not all agree on absolutely everything, but we are all not one monolithic people as well too. You should be afraid and even scared to death if we did become that. We're going to have varying opinions, But also our opinions are based on our individual experiences as well. Everyone has something awesome to offer, even if you don't think that you do. We're all just wheels. We're cogs in a bigger machine. So, yeah, I appreciate you, and I'm glad that you were able to hang out with us
Okay.
today.
So now I hope what I, along with Moreh David, took time to bring out today with the allowance of the Most High Yod Hey Wahe. Right. I hope that you understand now what the wall of partition is, the middle wall of partition.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not the Torah of Moshe.
And it's not even a piece of the Torah. Again, I'm sorry I keep
Yep.
jumping in like that, but
Jump in.
it's not even a piece of the Torah from the standpoint of some people will offer that. They say it's the quote unquote ceremonial part, da da da. Okay, again, that's a modern man-made construct. There is no such thing as civil, ceremonial, and all of these other things that people now. There are things that operate in that function, sure, but it does not mean that it somehow cuts it up. And I'll use the word again. You don't have to believe me. I'll use the word, and you can go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, the opening of Deuteronomy chapter 6, right before the Shema. It says this really, really briefly. It says, "V'zot mitzvah," and this is the commandment. The entire Torah is one commandment. Moshe makes that plain and clear. V'zot mitzvah. This is the commandment. Hachukim, the decrees. V'amishpatim asher tziva Yehovah Elohechem lelamed etchem la'asot be'aretz asher atem ovrim. These are. This is the one commandment that has decrees and has judgments, which Yehovah has commanded. Your Elohim has commanded you lelamed etchem, to teach you la'asot, to do them ba'aretz asher atem ovrim, into the land that you're passing into to possess. So this is why Paul says the commandment is holy and it's just, because it's like Jenga. If you're familiar with the game Jenga,
Yep.
you can stack them up on top of each other. Okay, but if you pull one out, in this case, it's not even about the right or the wrong place. In this case, if you pull one out, the whole thing falls. Especially, you remember the Mashiach, when the young man came to him and he says, Rabbi, Ezohi mitzvah gedolah b'chol Torah. What's the greatest commandment in all the Torah? Okay, ve'ahavta et Yehovah Elohecha. Okay, he says that one. Then he says, hashniya domala. The second one is similar to it. Okay, ve'ahavta et ra'ocha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. Al shtei hamitzvot. On these two commandments, talui, hangs. Kol Torah ve'kol nevi'im. The law and the prophets hang on this. And isn't it ironic that even as a slur to the Messiah who was hung on a cross, he was called Hatalui, the hung one. The hung one. Yeah.
Hallelujah. Sister Deborah has a follow-up question. She says, when the script warns people not to get cut off, do we even try to understand what implication that has for our relationship with Yod Hey Wahe?
Wow, that's the type of question that we want to have. That we want to have, not only to hear in the ears of people like you and I, but we want to have those type of questions as a people group. Because again, guess what? Her question is selfless in that she's worrying about the collective. She's concerned about the collective as opposed to just herself or maybe her immediate house. And see, that's the heart. That's the heart of Hebraic thought and culture. It's always been about the collective. Okay, the Greek or the Western has always been about me and mine. The Hebraic culture has always been us and ours. Okay, so yeah, I don't think we carry that. I don't think we weigh it enough, and that's also a good question from the standpoint of ultimately being cut off. What does that fully entail? Because in some cases, it wasn't always the physical death, but the cut off, in a sense, was exile as well too. Okay, and in a sense, it's not very different from death. Even in the modern sense, you hear, like for example, a good friend of mine who is a believer in Messiah, and he's a part of the greater Torah keeping world that don't look like us. When he came to believe in the Messiah after being raised in an Orthodox home, his family had a funeral for him in Israel, complete with a plot and with a headstone, because he was dead to them, as his father looked in his eyes and told him. So yeah, it does have implications, because what I would offer this within our community, we don't know what we're losing from that person who fell or who got lured away. We don't know who we lost. Someone who could contribute. Okay. Someone who can be used not just through head knowledge, right? Because we can't get stuck in head knowledge, but we have to be led by the Spirit. So, we don't know what yokes or what bounds can be broken by an individual who's on his way and up, and then he gets cut off or thrown to the side, or, Yah forbid, be someone who's cast aside by men, not by the Most High, but cast aside by men because he doesn't adhere, or he believes or views things in a different way. See, in a lot of cases, I'm going to tell you, people like, again, I crop us all in the same barrel, me, yourself, Brother Abad. A lot of ways, oh yeah, Mr. Blacktastic as well too. A lot of people will just as soon turn us off and never hear us again because we said one thing, or we have an opinion about something that goes against them. Check yourself. Check yourself, because even when we can be wrong, guess what? If you hang in there long enough, you can actually help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we don't weigh it, sister. We don't weigh it enough. We don't weigh it enough. Small parts of a whole can affect the whole. It can slow our journey down. And like I said, finally, Sister Shanti, I said, why not take the 11-day trip to the land instead of burning 40 years, walking in circles, fighting over the pronunciation of the name, fighting over whether Hebrew is pure or not, fighting over what day is really Passover, and fighting over, just all of these things. It's like Keystone Cops. We're running in circles and we're beating each other up. Let's circle around what we can agree on.
Yeah.
And we have Mashiach Yeshua, that we have our sanctification, our justification through him, and that we want to walk like he walked, and we want to be transformed into his image from glory to glory to glory to glory.
Hallelujah. I thank you all for every last one of you tuning in. I hope something that was said would encourage you, enlighten you, motivate you to really go back and seek the Most High with the information we put out. Please, 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 please. Like Sister Talisha said, listening to him speak fluently reminds her of the passion of the Christ. Yeah. If you want to hear more of Moreh David, he has a YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe. It is D. Glenn Royal, as you see here on his name tag there. D. Glenn Royal. That's where you can find his YouTube channel. He has several videos you can go watch. I am going to have him on again, and we got another special treat. He did a lesson before on his channel. I thought it was so impactful that he needs to come on my channel and do it. So if he would so bless me with that, but go ahead.
I know you need to go, but
I
have to tell these people something about you before I get off of here.
Take all the time you need.
Let me tell you guys. I promise I won't be long, because I know some of y'all are probably hungry. Thank you for hanging tight. Let me tell you about how I encountered her. You guys have to know. So, I'm an electrician. Some people who do subscribe to my channel, they know, because I've done videos on the construction side, X, Y, and Z. But me and my coworker, Mark McGee, and our fellow friend and brother, God bless Mark. He's my coworker. And we were working, Mark and I were working in the old, it's an old historic building, the old Goodwill building, downtown San Francisco, at the corner of 11th and Mission. It's a historic building because originally it was the first major Coca-Cola plant that was on the West Coast. Eventually it became the Goodwill building. But anyway, we're working underground underneath all this concrete downtown San Francisco. And there was only signal for your cell phone by the elevator shaft that went up to open daylight. And Mark tells me one day, he's like, this is Mark's classic speech. Blood, you got to check this girl out. And I'm like, what girl, Blood? he's like, man, there's this girl, man. She's a beast. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? You know? And he's like, well, he's like, man, she's up there, man. She parses the Greek. You know, she's got this teaching on kindling a fire. And man, I tell you, she's on point, but she's super humble and she's da 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 da. And I'm like, man, I have to see who this person is that he's talking about, because he doesn't just give that up. Mark is that type of guy. He doesn't just give that up. So I go and join him over by the elevator shaft, because at first he couldn't remember your name. He couldn't remember the handle that you use or whatever. But he was scrolling feverishly, but I'm reminding him we're also on the clock. So, you know, you gotta, you know, so finally he's like, I found her. So we walk over to the elevator shaft there, and we only have like a half of a bar, but it's just enough. And we stood there and we watched and stole that money from them white people for about 15 minutes. And the more we watched, the more both of our jaws dropped. And again, I'm not placating. I'm not blowing smoke. You make me want to duck and cringe sometimes, some of the kind of things that you say about me, and I appreciate them. But you need to know, and the people who subscribe to your platform need to know, that not only is that sentiment mutual, it's self-evident that it's mutual. I have all the respect in the world for her prowess with respect to the Greek language. I kind of see her as my flip side when it comes to that. And, you know, through a little, what they call in Hebrew, masal matan, give and take negotiation, you know, maybe we can become one new man. I can give you my half and you can give me the other half. And yeah, you can level me out from that standpoint. But yeah, I appreciate her not only for her intellectual prowess, but for primarily her heart and her spirit. And the fact that, hey, guess what? Shocker. She's a woman in a sphere that's dominated by some minds that can just be plain ignorant when it comes to whether a woman can spread knowledge, or whether, you know, that's another conversation for how it's nuanced and all these other things. But I believe that she is a beacon of light for women who feel like, you know, that, hey, what did I tell you? You only have to be in the kitchen and making hamburger helper and something else. But no, I love her for that, and her husband, I know, backs and supports her and stands in the gap. I remember somebody got flippant. I thought he was going to have to go 187 on somebody. He don't play with people disrespecting his wife. So yeah, I appreciate you, sister, so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Toda.
Okay,
We do have a question. You covered it. However, I'm going to ask you to cover it again. And if you need me to put that Ephesians 2 up again, I will.
Sure.
Brother Yawa Shema says, I believe that's a brother, says, can you ask Moreh, please explain the word ordinances as used in Ephesians 2, Hebrew meaning and usage in passage and contrast with law and commandments?
Okay, so what I can tell you, of course, and this is your area, sister, from one standpoint, in the fact that the word that's used there is dogmasin. Okay, which is its root word is dogma, where we get the term dogma. Okay, and what's most important to note about this, let me see if I brought some of my notes. What's most important to note about this word is that this word is used chiefly as as a decree or a man-made law that comes from someone who has a position of authority. Okay, again, a man-made law. Okay, it's like an edict passed down from someone in a position of authority. All right, so we know that the chok or the chukim from the Most High, he is the ultimate authority. Yes, the ultimate authority, and this is why, again, because of plain sovereignty, he can give a chok, and that is what it is. Okay, so now the brother sister word to dagamasin, and I can tell you that in the book of Luke chapter 2 verse 1, that word is used. Luke chapter 2, verse 1, it uses the word, and it is decrees, okay, translated as decrees. That's because it came, I believe, from Augustus, right? Augustus Caesar. Acts chapter 16 is used again, translated as decree, all right, again from person of power. Acts chapter 17 as well. Only in Ephesians chapter 2 and Colossians chapter 2 is it translated as ordinances, right? And it makes you ask the question, well, why only in those two places is it translated as ordinances, okay? So through a little, the power of deduction here, what you have to, or what I have to assume, is that there's an axe to grind here. If you use a word like ordinance instead of a decree, you can give the idea of something that's related to the law of Moses, okay? You can get that. Now, if you go back to the Tanakh, into the Septuagint, for example, you will see that I think in the book of Daniel, 12 times the word is used, 12 times in the book of Daniel. This is important because it gives us the foundation and the establishment of what the word really means. Okay, and again, these are things coming from Hashverosh, the king there at the time. Okay, being told, okay, when you hear the music play, you have to bow down. And guess what? These three Hebrew boys, when we turned on Biggie, they know they're supposed to bow down, right? But the music is playing, everybody else is bumping and bowing, and they're not moving, right? They're not moving. So now, to help me understand the last part of his question, because I forgot, he's Sister Shanti. So
He
that
said,
word in
yeah, what's
contrast.
in contrast to what did he say? In contrast to law and commandments.
Okay, in contrast with law and commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, so we have, like in the Torah, like I read in Deuteronomy 6:1, where it mentions the Chukim and Mishpatim. Okay, so Torah, of course, as I'm sure um, uh, the person who offered the question knows already, that Torah is basically just instructions. And then mitzvah, okay, Torah instructions, comes from the root word yara, to shoot at something with the intention of hitting, right? This is why in the modern Hebrew, someone shot at me, mishahu yarabi, yarabi. They fired on me. Literally, sounds like today, right? They fired on me. They shot at me.
Right.
And mitzvot, tziva, tzav, mitzvah, all right, it's a direct uh, commandment from the root word tzav, um, but they are components that make up Torah. So Torah is the instructions itself, but a part of those instructions are commandments, right? That's expected of the greater body. Okay, and then you have mishpatim, which are judgments, rulings on things, how things should be done. If someone, if your animal roams off your land and goes to your neighbor's land, and the animal gets hurt on your land, okay, it's your responsibility to make that neighbor whole, X, Y, and Z, or the darker ones if someone's caught in zinut, or in sexual sin, and you can't just stone one person. You got to go get them both. You got to give them rocks. You got to put them rocks on them, right? And then you have chukim, which is just a direct decree that comes from the magistrate, from the main power. And in a lot of cases, it's not clear. And again, I use the para aduma, the red cow ordinance, okay, which again, they use the word their ordinance, but it's a direct decree. And even though it's obscure and on the surface we don't get the full meaning, it's just do it because this comes from me and I say so. So out of hopefully that did address your question. Again, decrees, or the word dogmasin that we see that's used throughout the Septuagint and Daniel to represent the word me'et, with a mem ayin and a tet. Mem ayin and a mem ayin and a no, that's backwards. I'm dyslexic. It's a tet ayin mem, te'em. It is a word, again, that's used primarily through the Tanakh as a decree or an edict from a king or from a person in power, which means that it's not a part of the written word of the Most High. These are man-made rules. man-made rules.
I hope that was sufficient, Yawa, and thank you for tuning in or tapping in, as we would say on the West Coast, right? Uh, so with that being said, oh, okay, another question. And I got time if you got time. The
Sure.
people seem to be very engaged.
Sure.
And this is what we want to do for the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I love this question. I already know the answer. Please go in. Is father Av or Ava?
Okay. So Av, okay, for some Ab is definitely father. Father is its principle, its authority, its household provider. It's the one who drops the hammer when it's time to administer discipline. Okay. Abba, Abba is Aramaic. All right. So Av is spelled with an aleph and a vet. Aleph and a vet. Okay. Aramaic uses or employs the same script. So in Aramaic, it's spelled aleph, bet, aleph. All right. Abba. So Abba is more endearing. Abba is like literally like saying daddy, or daddy or papa. Okay. He'll still drop the hammer when it's necessary, but this is something a kid calls out to his father if he fell and skinned his knee and he's crying and he's looking to be comforted. I believe this is why specifically Yeshua used the word, or why it's Abba, the spirit of adoption, or why the word was used in that particular instance, because again, you're not crying out for the one that brings the authority and drops the hammer. You're crying out for the one that can save you, for the one that's going to nurture you and bring you in to the family. You're not an outsider. You're someone
Right.
who belongs. When he looks at his kids that he already had from before, and he looks at me, he doesn't see any difference. So yes, it happens the same thing with mother. M is mother in Hebrew, but Ima is mommy. It's in Aramaic. Again, it's softer. It's more endearing. And I'm very sure, in no uncertain terms, that this is, Miriam heard this from the mouth of a young Yeshua many, many times. Many times.
Got another question here. So, how do Torah, mitzvot, mishpatim relate to the sanctuary service during Yom Kippur or Yom
Oof.
Kippurim?
Boy, you got some, boy, you got these major league questions. That's a huge question. It's a great question. It would take an eternity to answer it. But what I will lay out to you is this: if you think about the process in the Torah, right? You remember a couple of parashas back, the commandment was made, Asule Mishkan, make me a Mishkan, okay? All right, and then Vani Shachanti Betocham, and I will dwell within you. Make me this house, make me this place. And then I will dwell literally inside of you. And then a couple of parashiot up, okay, you have the sanctification. This was last week, the sanctification of time and a place. So you have Shabbat being pushed to the 25th power, being pushed, excuse the expression, like Hillary was pushed, during, you have it being pushed really hard. Okay, because again, he wanted to reinforce, the 6 days that you work, but on the seventh, and on and on and on. But then he goes from that immediately to the house. So sacred time and a sacred place. Now, think about this. You can take Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? The fathers. You can take all of the time that's devoted to them in the Torah and combine it, and they still don't eclipse the amount of time that was spent on the Mishkan and the building of the Mishkan, the integral details of the tabernacle and what all was involved. It eats up more time in the Torah than all of the fathers combined. Okay, all of them combined, which says this, and we also keep in mind Yeshua walking down from Bet Yarim, is what is really called, but Emmaus, And he says, everything had to be fulfilled about me in the Torah, the prophets, and the Psalms. And even in that book that we have to be careful about when we mention, it says that all of the prophets speak, but for the days of Mashiach. All right, so we know that this tabernacle is intrinsically tied to the Messiah, intrinsically tied to him. Okay, so therefore the laws, the Torah, the Mishpatim, the Chukim, and the Mitzvot, they are intricately tied. Our keeping of those are intricately tied to this tabernacle. This tabernacle, okay, because it is our process of sanctification. It is our process of maintaining that sanctification, of maintaining it. Okay, Yeshua did the perfect work forever, once and for all, right? Stands in the heavenlies as the Kohen HaGadol. But there is the continued process of maintaining that sanctification. So yes, they are very tied in, because that tabernacle was nothing more than a representation, a heavenly representation, okay, and a reality of what we can all become as individuals. Build me a house so that I can dwell within you. So yes, they are intricately tied in.
You up for another question? I think this
Sure.
is a good one. Okay.
Sure.
Shalom to obvious truths. Says question for clarification. Did not truth exist as oral decrees of the Most High before being codified?
Oh, yes. Who are these people? These people have these awesome questions. These people have these, and see, that's so encouraging to me from the standpoint, and I have an example. I definitely have an example for you. One of a few. Yeah, I got to stay on point here. But the questions like these are very important because, again, we bought and we accepted so many things in our former faith lives, and we just walked with it, right? Because of Big Mama or because of whoever, and out of respect. Okay, so yes, before, truth did exist, absolutely. It's the foundation on which everything is built. Okay, sanctify them with your truth. Thy word is truth, right? So all of the worlds, right? Blessed is he who but spoken the world was. The whole worlds and everything was framed by his word, which is the essence of truth. And even the dumb question from Pontius Pilate when he asked him, what is truth? It's like, well, it's standing right in front of you. But example, yes. Do you remember the account when Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is running away from Lavan? Jacob is running away from Lavan because he grabbed a hold of his wives and his whole football team. Basically, he had a slew of wives and a whole bunch of kids. And he took off while Lavan was away to get away from him, right? So it says Lavan ran him down and cornered Yaakov in the place that we now call Gilgal. And when he caught up to Yaakov, he runs into his tent, and I can imagine he's going to reach for Jacob and grab him in the collar. And he says, what is this that you have done? Because you have stolen what is mine. So people who are reading the text right on the surface might say, well, that dirty dog, what is he talking about? That's that man's wives. Well, hold on. Lavan goes on to say, the wives that you have and the kids that you have are all mine. This is before the time of the codification of the Torah, yes? So after Mount Sinai and the Torah is codified, guess what you find in the Torah? That if a person has sold themselves as a slave, as a debted slave to a person, their wives and even the children that they bear belong to the person that they are in servitude to. How did Lavan know that? Laban, some people would call him. How did he know that? Or was it just so cool what Lavan knew? Because we know he's not a good guy. Or was it just so cool that what Lavan did that the Most High added it to his Torah? No. This was apparently one of many things that was known and that was carried over. Because remember, we're not dealing with a religious system. We're dealing with a way of life. Even today, what we come into, and we understand that we're not practicing a checkpoint of to-do lists in order to be a part of a religion.
Right.
Torah, Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 23, says that it is a way of life. So yes, your answer is a ringing, profound yes, resounding yes.
I do want to add, it's definitely beneficial for us to ask the Most High Yahweh for discernment in what's a decree from the Most High Yod He Wahe and what's a decree from man.
And you know what'll give you that? You know what'll give you that? Feverish people, please hear me. Feverish study of the Torah will tell you, will show you explicitly what the difference is. And again, as Sister Shanti said, a lot of those things are beautiful. There are customs and traditions and X, Y, and Z that are beautiful, right? But the bottom line is that any time they're picked up and they're used to supersede the text, because even it was going on during Isaiah's day. You remember, because Yeshua quoted him. He says, okay, bisfatav kibduni. These people with their lips, kibduni, they give me praise, right? All right? But their hearts, richek mimeni, richek, it's far from me. It's far from me. Why? Because they take the quote-unquote doctrines or chukim, okay, they take these doctrines of men and they pass them off as the word of the Most High. Yeah.
Hallelujah. Thank you for that. All right. Definitely going to close it out. I thank everyone again for tuning in, listening, tapping in. I hope something was said that was edified, encouraging, uplifting. I hope you take this back in prayer and meditation to the Most High. Ask the Most High to bring you to a sound conclusion. Remember, any of these resources you need that I shared, you can ask me and I'll give them to you. My email is in the description box and in the post that I shared. Right. Remember to subscribe to D. Glenn Royal. That's D. Glenn, DGLEN ROYAL, as you see in his name there, as you see his name tag there. Please also subscribe to 916 Sean. 916 Sean. I will have Moreh David come on again, and we're gonna have another special treat, a lesson that he's already done on his channel. But I would love for him to come on again and do that lesson on this channel as well. These things needs to be spread. So please, please, please like and share. Like and share and subscribe. Thank you, Moreh David, for coming on. I really appreciate you. As Brother Vinny calls you, the gentle giant. You are a gem in this community. And people need you. People need you to be seen as much as possible and heard as much as possible. I mean, you clarify so much. You help clarify so much that has been spread like wildfire in this community with some of these false doctrine and false dogma. And I appreciate you being fluent in the language as well as a lot of the culture. You do understand a lot of the culture. As if I'm recalling, you've been to the land of Israel. You've been to the land in 1948 Israel at least what 6-7 times you said, something like that, or
16.
16.
And 16. Yeah, making a return for Pesach this year. I'll be there for Pesach this year with somebody you know.
Oh, I gotta get in with y'all one year. I'm actually saving. I'm saving my coins and my ducats. Okay. I'm saving my collard greens and I'm saving my cabbage and all that.
I'll tell you what the plans are. We're going for Pesach this year.
Okay.
For Pesach this year, and also the plan is to return after Sukkot toward the end of this year with a group of people who might want to go. So yeah, it's not, there's ways to do it, and it's not terribly expensive. There are ways to do it, and we can talk about it moving forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely
talk to you more about I know because Pastor Henry Benz at Congregation Rehoboth, he's planning to come as well. And awesome. So I'm looking forward to pounding the pavement with some of my folks.
Hallelujah. All right. So thank y'all again for tuning in, watching in. Keep us in your prayers. Please remember to spread love, compassion. Remember to spread love, compassion, peace, and long suffering, patience, right, with the people, right? We're gonna ask that Moreh David close us out with the priestly Aaronic blessing.
My pleasure. Thank you, sister. Aaron was commanded to bless the people in this manner. Yivarechecha Yehovah ve'yishmarecha. Ya'er Yehovah panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Yehovah panav elecha va'yasem lecha shalom. May the Most High Yud Hey Vav Hey, may He bless you, guard over you. May the Most High Yud Hey Vav Hey cause His face to rise upon you and be merciful to you. May the Most High Yud Hey Vav Hey cause His face to shine upon you and give you His wholeness, His peace, and His shalom. That's my hope and my prayer for you all. Much love from the West Coast, everybody.
West Coast, the left coast. Shalom, shalom, mishpacha v'harim. Now y'all know what the wall of partition is. Blessings. Shalom. What up? Shalom with barakot. Shalom, shalom. We'll see y'all later.